Oopsie, there's the bell.
The bell works.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to council. Good afternoon, staff and councillors. I'd like to resume this regular council meeting of Monday, January the 28th.
Sorry, that's supposed to be turned off.
I would ask if there's any additions or changes to the agenda. I believe staff have at least one.
Yes, Your Worship. The presentation today under item 13.2 is cancelled. And we do have some additional correspondence for the items this evening to do with the proposed cannabis store. Some additional letters which have been distributed.
Okay, and that's the letter from Acuity and from Smart Centers. Those are the two?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I think all council has those. Any others from staff?
No.
Council, is there any additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Any disclosure of interest for councillors on any of the items? All right, I see none. We'll go to item number 5, confirmation of minutes. Confirmation of minutes for the regular council meeting minutes of January the 14th, 2019. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Wallace Richmond, seconded by Councillor Cannon, that the regular council meeting minutes of January 14, 2019 be adopted as circulated.
Is there any discussion or items of business coming for those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Special council meeting minutes of January the 21st, 2019. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Cannon, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the special council meeting minutes of January 21st, 2019 be adopted as circulated.
Any questions or business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. We'll go to item number 6, committee reports, starting with the Development Planning Services Committee meeting minutes of January the 21st. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond, that the Development and Planning Services Committee meeting minutes of January 21, 2019 be received as information.
Thank you. Any questions around those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Item 6.2, Downtown Parking Commission meeting minutes of January the 15th, 2019. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Cannon, that the Downtown Parking Commission meeting minutes of January 15, 2019 be received as information.
Is there any discussion around those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Item 6.3, Environmental Advisory Committee meeting minutes of January the 10th. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Lindgren, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting minutes of January 10, 2019 be received as information.
Is there any discussion around those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Item 6.4, Shuswap Regional Airport Commission meeting minutes of January the 22nd, 2019. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the Shuswap Regional Salmon Arm Airport Commission meeting minutes of January 22nd, 2019 be received as information.
Thank you. I would just like to bring council's attention to item number 3. We have an item related to the BC Access Grant application for runway paving, and there was a motion at the commission moved by Renee Talbot, second by Terry Rice, and it was carried unanimously as far as funding our piece of that airport runway repaving. So the item will come up later, but I wanted to bring that to your attention that the commission had passed a motion, and we will see that a little later. Councillor Lindgren.
Thank you. I just wanted to fix a typo. I think it's a typo in item 3, paragraph 2, line 2. It says the scope of the project, including timelines, potential downtown asphalt costs. Is that supposed to say downtime, perhaps?
Certainly it's not supposed to say downtown. I'll just check with the director. I think potential downtime is correct.
I would suspect I haven't been able to find
Yeah. So I'm sure that's the case.
Item 3, paragraph 2, line 2 starts with scope of the project, including timelines. Then it says potential downtown.
Yeah, and I was a
Just a
signatory of those
typo.
minutes, so I think it is downtime. Thank you for the correction. Any other questions around those minutes? Thank you. All those in favor? And that passes. On to item 7.1. I know we spoke about the board in brief, but we didn't have the actual written text at the last meeting. CSRD directors, is there anything that you'd like to point out to us? Are there any questions from councillors around the information on this board and brief? Seeing none, that is for our information. We'll go to staff reports. Item number 8.1, Director of Engineering and Public Works Downtown Parking Commission member appointments. I would accept the mover. Thank you, Councillor Eliason. A seconder, Councillor Cannon. And that motion is that council appoint the following 4 representatives: Kathy Ingebrigtsen, Vic Hamilton, Reagan Reddy, and Bill Laird to serve on Downtown Parking Commission for the 2-year term from February 27th, 2019, February 27th, 2021. Councillor Eliason, do you have anything you'd like to say about the motion? Okay, any questions around the motion? All those in favor? And thank you to those volunteers agreeing to sit on that board. Item 8.2, Director of Engineering and Public Works, BC Air Access Program. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Cannon, seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond, that council authorize submission of a grant application under the BC Air Access Program for the Shuswap Regional Airport Runway 14-32 paving project, estimated at $1.5 million plus taxes.
Thank you. And I'll ask the Director of Engineering and Public Works if he would speak to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. So BC Air Access Program has announced another intake for potential funding of projects, and this is 75% funding. And the intake closes on February 18th, 2019. And one of the projects that was identified earlier was the repaving of the main runway. This is a $1.5 million project. The application is surrounding airport use and safety, and this falls within that within that category. And as Mayor Harrison spoke to earlier, there was a special meeting held with the Airport Commission, which is the regional district and city members, and they approved funding through reserve funds. So we're looking for a motion from council to allow staff to submit the application.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions by councillors? Okay, just before I call the question, it's my opportunity to talk about the airport a little bit, so I'll take that opportunity. And just a reminder to councillors that this is a Shuswap Regional Airport, that we share the operating costs with the CSRD. And there's lots happening at the airport. There's 4 projects that well, 3 projects plus this that we're working on. The new fuel tanks and card lock system are in place, and that was also a partial grant to make that happen. So now airplanes can refuel at any time. There does not have to be an operator there. They just use their card lock to make that work. The second project is Taxiway Charlie to replace Taxiway Bravo. And I know that council is familiar with the plan of the airport to build that taxiway parallel to the airport runway, which is going to open up space for hangars. Third, the removal and trimming of trees from the north and south sides of the airport, which has been a huge project, and that we're completed. And then this 4th one is to rehabilitate the airport runway. And the runway, I believe, was paved in the early 1980s. So we have got good value on that asphalt, about 35 years worth. But it is starting to bump in places. And for small airplanes, it's not that big a deal, but there are larger airplanes that land out there. And before the runway disintegrates to a place that would cost extra dollars to replace, it's important that we do it now. And with this grant out there, we can get federal funds to help us do it. And by shifting the monies as is suggested here and as the Regional Commission agreed to, that'll allow us to apply for the grant. So I would ask council to support that. All those in favor? Thank you, council. Did you have a question?
I can ask it after.
Okay. All right. We'll move on then to item 8.3. award for engineering services, Ross Street Underpass, detailed 100% design. I would ask if there would be a councillor that would move that motion. Councillor Eliason, is there a seconder? Councillor Flynn. Could I have the administrative officer read the motion, please?
Moved by Councillor Eliason, second by Councillor Flynn, that the engineering services contract for Phase 2.3B of the Ross Street Underpass detailed design be awarded to RF Binney and Associates Limited for $79,100 plus taxes as applicable, and that the city's purchasing policy be waived in procurement of these services relative to Project 29-36 to authorize the sole sourcing to RF Binney and Associates.
Thank you, and I'll ask the Director of Engineering and Public Works to speak to that on the sole sourcing piece.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, as you know, the referendum for the underpass was approved at the last election, and therefore we are moving forward with the project. We have the design for the Ross Street Underpass in almost a 90% complete stage. The only thing that isn't at 90% is actually the rail design, because we're working with CP Rail on that. So what this report is about is moving forward with bringing the drawings to 100% proof, and therefore getting a proper estimate for the tender. And then the tender documents will be approved or completed, and we'll tender the project out this spring. So essentially, and the sole source component is, we've been working with Binney since 2014, so it makes sense to keep the consistency and not have to go for a tender on this project.
Thank you, appreciate that. Could we just move to page 53 on the, just so that the people in the gallery can see more specifically about the summary of costs. Is there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Flynn?
Yeah, all I would say is we always have to discuss sole sourcing, and when somebody's done the 90% pricing and drawings, it's quite clear that the final 10% we shouldn't have to go out to tender. They've done all the work till now. They're intimately familiar with the project, and I very much support the motion to sole source to RF Binney.
Thank you. As part of the report, it said the project tender should be ready in the early spring. And I wonder if it's possible just to have staff outline the timeline, approximate timeline on the actual Ross Street Underpass planning and construction.
So, Your Worship, if the tender goes out in early spring, we hope to, it'll probably take a month to go out and then come back to council for the award. And then really it's up to the contractor, the successful contractor, to propose a timeline and time frame. We will give some guidelines to when we want to see the work done. And obviously we're very conscious about the downtown core being affected by any traffic and infrastructure. But we're hoping that the main phase of the project is actually going to be building the spur track, which is the siding track, to allow the trains to bypass the construction area. And at that point, then the contractor can start working on the actual bridge component and the utilities in Lakeshore. So I would see that the majority of the track work would be done in the summer, and then later into the fall, September maybe, some of the work on Lakeshore would get started. So not impacting the major tourist component of and then hopefully, if everything goes the way we want it to, it should be done by 2020, the summer of 2020.
Thank you for that timeline. Can I just ask that the spur work and the CPR rail line piece, is that mostly on the north side of the tracks now?
That's correct. So essentially there's going to be a large berm area constructed, and the tracks will essentially bump or go around the Ross Street Underpass. So we've negotiated right-of-ways from the property owners to the north, and as again said, that'll be the first part of the project, because we have to get the trains out of the way so we can actually start construction.
Okay. Thank you. So I think it's important for the residents to know that we're trying to plan this project, which is really a year-long construction project, from approximately September to September, so that we don't disrupt the downtown over 2 summers. And depending how it goes, perhaps even not for any summers at all, but I'm suspecting it'll be a September to September project, and we'll do our very best to plan around what's happening in the downtown. But we're hopeful that we're going to see actual on-the-ground work there, probably in early summer on the north side of the tracks. Any other comments or questions from staff or from council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Thank you, that passes unanimously. We will move to 8.4, execution of the license to use agreement between Chief Up Recreation Society and Salmon Arm Sports Incorporated. I need a mover for that motion. Councillor Cannon, would you move that as our rep there? Thank you. Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Lavery, appreciate that. Could, would the CEO read the motion, please?
Moved by Councillor Cannon, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the license to use agreement between the Shuswap Recreation Society and Salmon Arm Sports Inc. for a 5-year term ending December 14, 2023.
Okay, could I ask the Director of Corporate Services to explain the agreement?
Thank you, Your Worship. The Shuswap Recreation Society has recently installed a video wall in the spectator arena, and this agreement would cover the terms and conditions under which Salmon Arm Sports, owner of the Silverbacks, could use this equipment, and it includes provisions for insurance, maintenance, exclusive rights, and such. We do have Darby Boyd here to speak further to it if you have additional questions.
Certainly. Darby, would you like to come forward to speak to us for a minute? And then I see we have at least one question from a councillor, but perhaps you'll proactively answer our questions for us. Welcome to council. Thanks, Darby, for coming here.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So, do you want to just talk a little bit about the actual agreement and the piece of equipment, et cetera?
Sure. So as you're aware from our previous agreement with Shaw Cable Systems, part of the contribution agreement.
Darby, can you just get closer to that mic?
Sorry. Part of the contribution agreement with Shaw Cable Systems was to install and do some of these improvements. The team was the only party. We don't want the equipment being used widely or indiscriminately, so the Silverbacks were one group that were interested and have done the training on it. So that what the idea of what our concern was that we would not want to incur any of the costs that would come with the operation or upkeep or maintenance or repairs or anything. So as a part of that, we entered into this agreement to ensure that the Silverbacks, who are going to almost exclusively use the video wall and sound system, would cover those costs.
Great, thank you very much. I'll open up to questions from councillors. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. I think you may have answered the question. I'm just wondering about exclusive use, and are there no other organizations that use the arena that might want to use this or would have an opportunity to use it?
Thank you for the question.
Through Your Worship. Yeah, other groups would have to do that through the Silverbacks. The training and it's fairly sophisticated equipment, so it's and something that we just didn't want minor hockey, as an example, just being able to go in and use it. We've had issues with electronic equipment and small user groups in the past, and that was not an option in this case.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you. Just my question just got answered, and I think it's important to recognize the value of that screen, the fact that it's basically a NHL level screen. I mean, I saw it for the first time on Saturday, and it's amazing how crisp and clear it is, and the significant investment in the equipment. I think this is the right way to go. I just hope moving forward that they can work with perhaps other groups that might want it for hosting big events and work in cooperation, but I'm fully in support of how you've done this, and I think it's a huge addition to that facility, and extremely positive. I find it interesting, for all the years I've been a season ticket holder for Silverbacks games, we've had what I would consider the luck to have a guy who does the the announcing, who's NHL caliber almost, and now we have an NHL caliber screen. So it's a nice asset.
Thank you, Councillor Cannon.
Thank you. And I saw the screen for the first time on Saturday, and it was pretty impressive. I had a question kind of similar to the other ones that have been asked, but if we do host a big event in this agreement, is there like an area there that touches on it that, I mean, we wouldn't want them to say, no, like, we don't have the time for you to use it or train it, you know, train you on it. So was that recognized in the agreement? Because I'm thinking if we were to host a big, say, a curling event or hockey event, yeah, figure skating, speed skating, you know, anything like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there were discussions around issues like that, and actually they have used it already for when they were doing the training. They used it during a hockey tournament as an example, and another example I think was figure skating. It was a big hit with the kids. The club's working really closely with those smaller groups. They had actually ring it out during the last game, and they're working. We had discussions around that, and they're also working with those groups as part of their community involvement. And I'm quite certain that would be their intention, is to work with those other groups. I think it's more so the revenue generation side of things in those circumstances don't really apply. But I think their intention is to work with those groups to make sure it's available for that.
So is there a little bit of a fee schedule to use it if other user groups do the training?
Those fees would be set by the Silverbacks.
Okay, thanks.
I think the intention is not to prohibit use, but to prohibit trained use is the idea.
Okay.
Councillor Wallace Richmond, did you want to speak? Sorry if you press your button there. Okay, all right. Is there any other questions or comments for Darby or the corporate officer? Councillor Wallace Richmond.
Thanks. Through you, Your Worship, could we hear from the corporate officers the standard agreement, and there's a way in and a way out if it doesn't work out? Or?
Okay, corporate officer.
Through your worship, yes, it is a standard agreement, and there are provisions if it doesn't work out.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Flynn?
I was actually going to ask something after we voted on the motion, but perhaps I can wait, or I'll ask now. Is there anything on February 10th that you might want to remind us about?
Through your worship, unrelated to the screen itself, but yeah, on February 10th we have our open house for the final public engagement for the pool study. So HCMA consultants will be there from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Saskatoon Rec Center. And so that'll be our final sort of community engagement for that process.
Okay, thank you for the reminder. All right, any other questions around the motion? I'll call a motion and all those in favor. Passed unanimously. Okay, item number 8.5. Director of Corporate Services, Animal Control Services Contract Award and Pound Services Agreement. Could I have a mover for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Seconder for the motion, Councillor Eliason. Could we hear the motion from Chief Administrative Officer?
Moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Eliason, that Council award the Animal Control Services contract to commissioners for a 3-year term from February 4th, 2019 to February 3rd, 2022 for $37,328.96 plus taxes per year, plus annual increase is equal to the greater of 2.5% or CPI, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the agreement with the City of Enderby for $1,500 per year plus applicable sustenance fees for impounded dogs.
Thank you. Could I ask the Director of Corporate Services to talk to us about this?
Thank you, Your Worship. Animal control services have been provided through contract for many years, And this year, the city was facing the end of a 5-year agreement and went to a competitive process. That process did not yield a satisfactory proposal. And at the same time, the CSRD was also facing the end of a contract. And city staff started discussions with the CSRD about how we could jointly work to find a solution. And it happened that we started discussions with the commissioners, who came back with a great proposal for 20 hours per week, all inclusive. They have a trained staff member available, and we will share that individual with the CSRD. The City of Enderby has allowed us to use their pound facility, because the city does not have a pound facility, for $1,500 per year and sustenance fees, which is the amount that we would need to pay for basically the upkeep of the animals while they're in care. And those fees are recoverable from individual dog owners when they come to collect the dogs. And this amount is well within the city's budget of $54,000 for contracted services.
Great, thank you very much. Questions or comments around this motion? Councillor Lindgren.
Thank you. I've been able to have some discussions with staff around this issue. From my perspective, I'm concerned that we contract this out, and I think that we have more supervisory control and quality assurance from an employee that's hired by the city to work for the city rather than contracting out. However, I understand that this subject would necessarily have to come up before a budget process because of upfront costs of outfitting a dog catcher or a animal control service person. But I'd just like to put it out there that when this contract expires, it would be my preference to see this come in-house and that we hire a dog control or animal control person in-house.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn.
I wanted to thank staff, City of Enderby, CSRD, and all of those who worked together to find a solution that wasn't available initially in the open bidding process. I think this is a great solution to an issue that's always been fairly contentious. I have full trust in the commissioners of BC to provide us with a very cost-effective service. And I think 20 hours a week is probably more than we were getting in the past. And I think the numbers being talked about are very fair. And most importantly is the partnership with neighboring communities and the CSRD. So I will vote in favor.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I see no other comments or questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. We'll move on to 9.1, introduction of bylaws. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond, that the bylaw entitled Fee for Service Amendment Bylaw number 4305 be read a first, second, and third time.
Thank you. I'll pass that to Director of Engineering and Public Works, I think.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is a housekeeping amendment to basically modify the prices for the water meters that are being sold by the city. The only change, obviously there's a change in price for the 2019, but the water meters on the commercial end, we're actually installing radio frequency heads. We have a new handheld reader that the staff don't have to crawl into small areas in order to get the reads anymore. So these are becoming very beneficial, and at some point in time, I would see that all of the meters would be equipped with these types of remotes. So,
thank you very much. Is there any questions from councillors around this motion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Go to item 10, reconsideration of bylaws. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Eliason, that the bylaw entitled 2019 Revenue Anticipation Bylaw number 4301 be read a final time.
Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This bylaw will allow the city to temporarily borrow in the event that we are unable to meet our cash needs during the first 6 months of the year, as we do not collect property taxes until July. The city's never been in a position that we've had to use it. However, it is a good practice to have it in place if we do.
Thank you very much, and this is final reading. Any questions from council? All those in favor? Thank you. We'll move to correspondence. Informational correspondence. I'll open it up to councillors who wish to speak to any items. Ask a second time. Any councillors want to speak to any items here? Thank you, Councillor Flynn.
Item 1, but I was waiting for others to speak so I could look up the reply. And I know it says N, which means no action required, but at the last meeting I had asked for this email to be added back in because I had an answer from downtown Salmon Arm in my emails that I wanted to refer to, but now I have to find it because I removed it. It's dated January 4th from the manager of downtown Salmon Arm, and it basically says that the decorations that have been used in the past have completed their life cycle. Downtown Salmon Arm are the people who, here I go, I found it. We opted to not put up any of our old decorations as they were in need of big repair, lights out, tinsel falling off. We had also received complaints about them looking retro and old. Last year I budgeted additional money to go towards capital expenses for new seasonal decorations. The city did approve $20,000 for a big downtown Christmas tree. After speaking to a local industrial park company, they commissioned them to make 10 snowflakes for us. Local company did the work. We felt that developing a relationship with someone in town could also help us build our inventory year after year and have more custom-made options. Bottom line is they have a multi-year plan to replace the old dated Christmas decorations, and with their annual budget, a multi-year plan is the only way we can successfully acquire new decorations, which also includes banners and lighting. Cities such as Vernon have a lovely lit up downtown due to a large cash contribution and commitment from the city a few years ago. So the answer came around to asking us for some more partnership money. Anyhow, the fact is the DSA is working on it. They are cognizant of the issue, and they opted not to use very dated, very old decorations and start working on updating them and replenishing them. And who knows, it might be part of a future specific referral in future budgets to have us help with that. So,
thank you, Councillor Flynn, as our rep to downtown Salmon Arm. Appreciate you bringing that to us. Councillor Lyson or Cannon, are you speaking to that item, or is it a different item? Okay, so appreciate that, Councillor Flynn. I guess the feedback I got from members of the public were that I think the piece they felt was missing was the lighting in the trees in the downtown. Councillor Lyson.
Number 2, I'd like to just refer this to our 2020 budget process. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your email response to that one. Did you want to speak to any others, Councillor Lyson?
No, I'm good.
Councillor Cannon.
Number 7 is an action item. So they're looking for, it's from Shuswap Immigrant Services Society, and it's their multicultural event. When is it? It's in June, the end of June. So they're wanting a request to use the Ross Street Plaza and the closure of Hudson Street.
Okay, would you make that motion?
And Ross, yeah.
Thank you. Seconder to that motion, Councillor Lavery, thank you.
And if I could just speak to it, I know I went to it last year and it was really well attended and a great event.
Thank you. It is the 27th, yes. Any other comments about that motion? All those in favor? Okay, and I know the recommendation is for one of the Shuswap Community Foundation grants to help support that multicultural festival, part of the city's granting. Councillor Cannon, did you have any other items you want to speak to?
No, that's good.
Okay. Councillor Lindgren.
Thank you. Item 8, When I read this letter about inaccessible public washrooms, I was a bit concerned, and I have not had a chance to go out and look at them to see what would need to be done. But I would be interested in having, I don't know how we work this, but perhaps staff making some recommendations on how we could make them accessible. I'm assuming this is to people in wheelchairs and scooters that are not able to access them.
Yeah, I think the accessibility that they're talking about is in the winter time, we close our washrooms. And so I think it's not wheelchair accessibility so much as accessibility during the winter time.
Okay.
I'll pass it over to Director of Engineering and Public Works because he maybe can add us information for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So most of the washrooms that are constructed are not full season washrooms. They're not insulated. And the only heat that's in them is in the mechanical areas, and it's just tempered heat so that nothing freezes over the winter. The Marine Park washroom is one of those washrooms. It would take a substantial amount of money to fully retrofit it and insulate it and make it a fully year-round washroom. Also, the fact is we would need additional operation funds to maintain and service those washrooms during those periods. So we have, similar to the Canoe Beach, is the same. Most of the washrooms get closed down. The Ross Street Plaza is one of the only ones that is open all year round and that is heated. And then we now have the one on the foreshore, which is essentially a latrine. So it's not heated.
Councillor Lindgren, did you have any follow-up you'd like to make?
No, not at this time.
Might I suggest that we respond, have staff respond to the letter with the information, and that we move this letter to our budget discussions in 2020, and then we can actually have some figures and facts to deal with at that time.
Sure, that would be good.
Okay, do we need a motion to do that, or can we just do that?
We don't need a motion.
All right, would that be satisfactory?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Lavery, did you want to speak to that? I'll just see if Councillor Flynn was speaking to that item. Is that all right? I'll just, Councillor Lindgren, did you want to add anything more?
No, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lavery.
Yes, thanks, and I support the idea here, and I just want to again thank those who've submitted the letter. I think this is ideas about a good, walkable, accessible downtown. I think that the other, and there were a number of ideas in there other than just the washroom, and I through you, Your Worship, to staff, and I think this is a great idea. And I can't remember whether we have them there, but they reference having a Sharps disposable container. Yeah, and and at least in the Ross Street Plaza, do we have that? And is that difficult to do?
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Your Worship, we don't have one in any of our washrooms. We are looking at a priority location, which is actually Blackburn Park for disposable sharps. So we're looking at getting costing for that. And the bins that we're looking at are actually lockable. They're different than the ones that you would see in sort of more institutionalized locations. So we are looking at some different locations. We'll add the Ross Street to our list as well. But right now we're finding that we have a lot more concerns at Blackburn Park.
So thank you, and thanks for the response. But again, I think it's a real good. As soon as I read this, I thought, yeah, actually, I was in there one time and I had those concerns, and then I forgot about it after I left. So this is just a wonderful recommendation to council. I appreciate getting this, and I think if we could certainly reflect that, we'll be thinking of that disposable retainer down the line. I think that's appropriate as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Any other comments about any of the correspondence? Councillor Flynn.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't highlight a positive snow removal letter. And I happen to live on a very heavily traveled, walked route to a number of different schools, and I am conscious of how quickly my wife gets out and cleans our driveway. So I think it's great that it appears that at recent snowfalls we've had a priority on helping to make sure the kids can get to school safely. And it's nice to get that positive feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn, for bringing that up. And I think this letter is an example of actually really good communication because, of course, of the busing changes for the school district. If you drive up Okanagan at either in the morning or at bell time, there is maybe 100 kids walking up and down the sidewalk on Okanagan. And in our communications with the school district, they had asked us in very reasonable terms if it would be possible for us to focus on that sidewalk, and it looks like that's happened. So I think it's a good news story. Thanks for bringing it up. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. So flipping through, I realized that I had meant to speak on item 11. There's a letter from Rob Fleming announcing the Premier's Awards for Excellence in Education. As a member of the education community here, I just want to draw people's attention to that people can make nominations from the public. Students, parents, teachers, administrators, trustees, and community organizations can nominate people who work in the education system that are doing, going above and beyond and doing an excellent job at their school or wherever it is that they work. And I would really encourage the public to get involved in that. That's a brand new program last year, so this is just the second time. It's a really good initiative.
Thank you very much for highlighting that and bringing it to our attention. Any other items from 1 to 13 that people want to bring up? Okay, seeing none, we will move to 11.2, which is 2019 Federation of Canadian Municipalities Convention. Could I have a motion from a councillor to fund Councillor Lindgren and Wallace Richmond to attend this conference? Thank you, Councillor Cannon, Councillor Flynn. Discussion around the motion. Okay, Councillor Flynn.
Well, I think we need to highlight the fact that I believe our policy with regards to FCM is among one of the best. We're allowed to go once in a 4-year term. I think we get good value splitting up our attendance, and I am very much in support of these two councillors attending the conference in Quebec City. Talking last week to other municipalities, I think we're showing fiscal responsibility as well by only allowing our councillors to go once every 4 years. So I think it's a good combination of allowing us to get education, networking, and being responsible in how often we attend something like that.
Thank you. Councillor Lindgren.
Thank you. I just wanted to say how appreciative I am to get an opportunity like this. I know that when we go to federal and national type conventions, we are able to glean a whole lot of information that we wouldn't just pick up in our small community, and it's good to know what's happening across the country. So it'll be a great networking opportunity, and I feel very lucky to be going to something like this in my first, this early in my term. So thank you very much.
Okay. Any other speakers? Okay, thank you. And I know that councillors that attend FCMs always come back and share with the rest of us who aren't able to go that particular year, so we all learn. All right, I will call the question, and all those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. We are a little ahead of schedule, so I think we'll skip down, if that's acceptable to council. We're expecting Tracy Kuchner at 4 o'clock. It's 3:15 about. I think we can probably cover a few other items prior to her being here. So I'd like to skip down to item number 14 then, council statements. And I'm wondering, Councillor Lavery, if you would be comfortable doing your SILGA presentation now.
Let's roll.
Okay, thank you very much. You're on.
I'm not critiquing you on this one at all. I'm just waiting.
Yes, I can. There you go.
Light me up. Lit. Thank you, Your Worship. And I just want to start off by saying that Salmon Arms had a long and very productive history with SILGA. Councillor Eliason is a current past president, was president for a number of years, and has guided the organization further. And Councillor Flynn for 8 years was involved with SILGA, both as a director and as president and past president. So we have had a long history with that. It's really an important relationship to have. I'm currently, for the past 2 years, been a director at large at SILGA, and one of our responsibilities is to do a road show. I think it's a little bit redundant for this council, but I want to go through it anyhow. I'm going to skip through a bunch of slides, but the essence here is a little bit overview of what SILGA is, and then more focusing on the upcoming convention in Penticton, which is April 30th to May 3rd, if I have it right. So thank you very much for that. And again, Southern Ontario Local Government Association, SILGA. And I'm just going to focus on the top bullet here. SILGA works to represent each community within the BC Southern Interior region and to be a strong and effective, a unifying voice on common issues and regional initiatives. SILGA is the only local government association actually that meets directly with ministers. So as an example, on the invasive mussel species, individual regional districts and cities are expressing their concerns, but also SILGA goes into meetings with ministerial staff and ministers and collects those concerns from the region and reinforces those as well. Shelley Sim is the current councillor from Clearwater. Chad Eliason, past president, and I think Councillor Eliason, this is your last term as past president. You'll notice that down at the bottom there are 2 director-at-large positions vacant. That was because of the vagaries of the last local election and some people not running again. And there was one appointee in the interim, Councillor Judy Sentis from Penticton, because the conference is being held in Penticton and we needed that relationship. There are 11 positions on the SILGA board. And if folks are interested in running, it's a working board. There's a lot of work to be done. But it gives an opportunity to see the breadth of issues within the region. I'll talk more about that in a minute. There is a March 1st deadline for a nomination booklet. That'll be coming out in an email along with information about the conference in the next week or 2. And as well, nominations from the floor for these positions are possible. So, and certainly we can talk more about that. This is my favorite slide of the whole presentation. Again, SILGA is one of 5 local government associations throughout the province, but it's sort of indicative of the scope. There are 37 local governments. SILGA extends north to Blue River and Clinton, south to the US border, west to Lillooet, and east in the Columbia Shuswap, just near Golden. So 6 regional districts, 37 local governments, including those regional districts, and about 510,000 residents based on the 2016 last census. So fairly significant. I won't spend any time on the members. Salmon is in there, but those are the list of 37 local governments. The mandate has always been to connect, educate, and advocate. It's just that we came up with the terminology here in the last 6 months just to shorten it up and make it less than a mouthful. In terms of connecting, again, SILGA connects communication between SILGA members. A key thing is the education part, and SILGA puts on regional workshops, usually in Kamloops and Kelowna, on Finance 101, the playbook, Aboriginal relationships that will be coming down the line. And the other one, advocating, again, I sort of referenced it, it's identify those issues by asking members, not only at the director-at-large table, but input sessions, there will be one at SILGA as well, what issues are resonating with you, what can be shared, what can we do from that larger level. And as example, Councillor Eliason, I think, presenting to Sycamoose the other day, a good example, one of the issues was, hey, we're a small community, we have to do all this work in developing plans that may already exist out there for other things. We need to share that information among us, and that's one of the roles of SILGA. I'll just focus on the 3rd bullet here, but certainly encouraging members to submit resolutions for the annual SILGA convention and subsequent support at UBCM. There's a deadline on that of March 1st for submission, and that'll be that'll be presented to the CAO. Will get the email and we'll distribute that to us. I'll skip over that. 18-19 strategic planning goals. Affordable housing is what we heard very clearly from those 37 local governments. Climate change and impacts on local governments coming out of the Chapman-Abbott report. And opioid crisis for rural and urban communities, especially some of the rural communities we don't have the services for. doing that. That has led to essentially the workshops, or a number of the workshops that will be at the Penticton Convention. We've got BC Housing, Ministry of Housing coming, Emergency Management BC is there, and we have a pending invitation to the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions to speak to it. However, given the, again, I used the word vagaries before, the political situation, I'm not sure, and the House, the legislature may well be in session. I'm not sure the availability of either government or opposition members to be away from the legislature when this happens, but that is the intent right now. Second or third last slide. Wednesday morning tours, the Summerland Agricultural Research Facility, Okanagan Nation First Hatchery, a walking downtown revitalization tour of Penticton. And I have to say the walking tour in Revelstoke last year was really helpful about thinking how they pulled things off, and they brought folks together. Under the sessions, again, fire and floods, BC Housing Hub, especially for the market housing parts of things, working with neighboring First Nations band, that should say, that's an old copy. Bear Aware, I'm really excited on Friday morning. There will be a engaging youth panel that we'll have there between Kamloops, Clearwater, and Salmon Arm. Grace Sim has been invited to be there as well. And there's been a number of local governments, Summerland comes to mind, are thinking of instituting similar things. So we'll have that panel there. There'll be stuff on tourism, communications. Surviving City Hall will be another workshop presented on during the conference. The two keynote speakers, Joe Roberts, Skid Road's CEO, award-winning inspirational keynote speaker. His mission is and has always been to instigate a ripple effect of positive change everywhere he goes by reminding people of their potential. Joe's actually undefeated by addiction, homelessness, poverty, and he's learned to take responsibility for changes in his life, and he will share his insights and strategies with the conference. I do want to harken back to the last two conferences where we've had speakers on social approaches and keynotes. The one last year in Revelstoke was absolutely riveting and gave a lot to think about. So not only do we get practical workshops, but more philosophical approaches to life in general, and try to implement that within local government. And Harry McWaters, a legend as well, on Thursday night he will be taking us through a history of BC wines and how to pair wines with food. And the last connection here, benefits of attending the convention, resolution debate, thought-provoking and educational sharing of best practices within the region, and networking with peers. So registration's open in early February. That email will go out shortly. I'd encourage you to attend. There's huge take-homes from the SILGA convention. So with that, Your Worship, I'm not sure if it's under 5 minutes or over, but I'm finished.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lavery. Appreciate you presenting to us. Is there any questions for Councillor Lavery? Okay, seeing none, I would like to thank you, first of all, for being a director, and also to Councillor Eliason for chairing SILGA. And I think that that time that Councillor Eliason was involved in the chairing, a lot happened at SILGA as far as rebuilding the communications, both between local governments and SILGA, and between SILGA and the province. And I think the City of Salmon Arm definitely benefited from the communications that we have and the relationships we have established through Councillor Eliason. So appreciate all those who are involved. Other council statements? Any of the councillor have a council statement? I'll just briefly comment on LGLA. First of all, I think it was terrific that all of you were able to attend LGLA. And I think the bottom bullet here, networking with peers, I think there was a really great opportunity to do that. I know I spoke to councillors and mayors from Barrier to Osoyoos, and I'm sure that you did as well. And it was really good to compare the issues that they're dealing with and the issues that we're dealing with, and how they're doing it and how we're doing that. also there was some excellent speakers and some very current topics that that I found useful. The workshop I attended on emergency management services was especially helpful to me, as it's one of the things Councillor Lavery and I are responsible for, and I learned a lot there. So I appreciated all of council being there and being so involved, and I think the City of Salmon Arm, I think we may have been the most vocal group there. I noticed whenever there was an open mic, there was one of our councillors or somebody was there asking a question or giving input, and I think that's a great sign. So appreciate your involvement. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship. And I did want to just make a comment on Silga too, and thank Councillor Eliason for his years of dedication as president and now past president, and Councillor Lavery for his role. But it's true that our relationship goes back a long way. In fact, before it was called Silga, it was the Okanagan Mainline Municipal Association, OMA, and Mayor Mays was the president of that at one point as well. So we've had a long history. I think that organization, when you look at the geography and you recognize what's going on politically in our province with the divide or the difference between rural and urban, I think Silga becomes even more important to represent our more urban or more rural areas, and the interior. I think Silga is going to play a more even significant role. But part of LGLA was being with all of our Silga members, and I did find significant value in a number of the presentations, and I did want to echo your comments that we were certainly an enthusiastic and involved group when it came to asking questions, being involved, and your impromptu sitting in a panel was very well done as well. So thank you for representing us so well there.
Okay, thank you. Any other council statements? Okay, we will move on. Our youth council are writing exams this week, so they are not with us, but they will be back. We'll go to unfinished business and deferred table items. I think we have time for them. First one is 17.1. Give councillors a time just to get to that item. And it was a deferred motion. Can we have the administrative officer read the deferred motion, please?
Yes, Your Worship, this was deferred from January 14, 2019, and it was moved by Councillor Lindgren, seconded by Councillor Wallace-Richmond, that Council authorize one councillor to attend the Fraser Watershed Restoration Conference from April 24 to 25th, 2019 at the Thompson Rivers University in Kamloops, BC.
Thank you very much. The mover of that motion was Councillor Lindgren, Councillor Wallace-Richmond second. So Councillor Lindgren, will give you the opportunity to speak to it.
Thank you. I did a little bit of sort of napkin figuring of what it would cost to attend this conference, because the main focus of the conference is about reconciliation and how water plays a part in that. That's one part of it. And reconciliation is sort of the word of the day, federally, provincially, municipally. It's something that we want to work towards. It's something we all need more education on. And so it interests me quite a lot to go. And I know that when I suggested this at the last council meeting, there were concerns about there are a lot of conferences that happen and we only have so much money in the budget, and I absolutely understand that. I just wanted to put it out there that I will probably be unlikely or unable to attend the SILGA conference in Penticton because it conflicts with another convention that I'm committed to. And so thought that it might be possible that the money I would have been spent for me to attend that may be able to be spent on this conference instead. I think that whether I drove back and forth both days and stayed at home that night or drove there and got a hotel and drove back the next day, I believe the cost would be just under $1,000.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. Other speakers to the motion? Councillor Flynn.
Well, your years of sitting beside you at this table, you've been talking about a discretionary education / conference budget, and we've never formally adopted that. And what we did was everybody can go to SILGA each year, everybody can go to UBCM if they'd like, and I don't think we've ever had 100% attendance at either. I've always been where a person who felt that we should identify the conferences that are important, and I think we've done that, but it hasn't given us much room for discretionary. And in light of the fact that the counselor that wants to attend this, Councillor Lindgren, doesn't plan to attend SILGA, I am leaning more towards supporting this than I was in the past. I also do see the information does focus a lot on reconciliation, and I guess if staff can confirm this would cost less than SILGA will, I would be able to support it. If Councillor Lindgren was also planning to attend SILGA, I would suggest that we'd have to decide which one. But in light of that, we were flexible a couple of years ago to allow Councillor Wallace-Richmond, when she was the chair of our Canada 150 committee, to attend a second FCM because I wasn't going to SILGA that year, or to UBCM that year. I think it's okay to reallocate those dollars, but I'll wait to hear what others have to say.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers to the motion? Councillor Lavery?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. Based on the discussion, and I think that the price will be very, very similar. I would support it as well.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Thanks, Your Worship. I will also support. I think it's a reasonable request and very high-level conference, noting that both the Premier of the province and the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans is in attendance. So if we vote for it, I look forward to a full comprehensive report upon your return. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers to the motion? Okay, I don't mind speaking to the motion. I've always advocated, as Councillor Flynn has spoken to having a professional fund so that each councillor could use those professional funds to attend conferences that they wanted to attend, and then we'd also have a budget that everybody would know about and it would be controlled. Because there's so many good ones out there. Was another good one in informational correspondence again this time that could have been useful. I will support this based on the SILGA discussion that Councillor Lindgren would attend this instead of SILGA, and you would be okay with having an understood amendment in the motion to that degree, or just an understanding? Okay, all right. I don't think we need a formal piece, so. All right, any other speakers to the motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously. 17.2. Feasibility of installing green technology on a city-owned facility. There's a motion required from the floor on this one. I know that there's been some discussions with Councillor Lavery and the Administrative Officer around what that motion might be. Councillor Lavery, can I open it to you to start with?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And again, I want to thank staff as well. We've since the last meeting, we've had some ongoing refinements, I think, about how to proceed with evaluating a solar panel potential on an existing building. And I do appreciate the work of the Chief Administrator in the discussion in the past 10 days. The Administrator, and he does have it on our screen here now, and I will speak to it afterwards, but I would be prepared to move that we direct staff to engage a consultant to evaluate solar electricity potential for 3 existing buildings. And I'll speak to the motion if there's a seconder.
Seconder, Councillor Lindgren, thank you. Councillor Lavery, go ahead and speak to the motion.
Yeah, again, thank you, Your Worship. And again, the idea of all along with this was a pilot project that would sort of represent the usage and the requirements of an average residence to be funded out of Climate Action Reserve. And a reminder that these are not taxation-based funds, but come out of our annual CARIP reporting fund to the province. And I've, again, without repeating it from 2 weeks ago, I've continually advocated that we use a lens of a third, and a third as we expend these funds. A third of it on big emitter issues, save a third of it, and use the other third for very demonstrable projects that may not be as readily apparent to citizens, but actually provide some leadership and demonstration of essentially moving towards ideas of low carbon technology, low carbon future. The technology itself is rapidly changing. It's for the better. Retrofits, in my view, and I admit that it's not a professional view, but are not particularly problematic. There are sound financials to this. We're now in payback range of 12 to 13 years for payback. Panels are lasting over 25 years. The savings over a lifetime is likely going to be about 4 times the cost of the install, and that doesn't even take into account projected hydro rates. So I support this, and I would urge you to too. I think it's phase 1. And this phase 1 is really let's get an evaluation of solar panel potential for these 3 possible sites and have those that data on the shelf. There's not enough money in the Climate Action Fund at this stage to proceed with an installation. But again, we are anticipating that contingent annual funding coming in sometime this summer, likely of the order around $50,000, and that would be more than enough to fund once we have data-based reports in front of us. So I would, and perhaps we could have, we have it been second, perhaps the Chief Administrator could read out the full motion because I've just summarized a portion of it.
Thank you, Chief Administrative Officer.
So the motion, Your Worship, is moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Lindgren, that Council direct staff to engage a consultant and/or solar provider to evaluate the solar electricity potential for the following existing city buildings and/or properties: Salmon Arm Arts Center, Salmon Arm Arts Center, City Hall, Fire Hall number 3, and that the intent of the feasibility assessment be to make recommendations and provide a cost estimate for the design and installation of a potentially grid-fed solar voltaic system, including structural assessment, the capital cost and projected annual operating and maintenance costs, and that the project be funded to a maximum of $5,000 from the Climate Action Reserve.
Thank you very much. Could I just ask the Chief Financial Officer what the balance is in the Climate Action Reserve presently?
Your Worship, it's approximately $17,945.
Okay, so we have ample monies there. Thank you. Councillor Lavery, do you wish to speak further? Can I pass it on? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could just add to that, the intent of this is to go to an RFP process. It'll be on BC bid and widely distributed, and that just with anecdotal reports, the $5,000 is, I think, going to be more than enough to do that evaluation on those 3 sites. So I would just urge us to adopt this.
Okay. Other speakers? Councillor Lindgren.
Thank you. I'm really excited by this. I think this opens up a whole bunch of potential for us. I think that this is a good first step in testing it here to see what it can do and to, convince ourselves that this is a worthwhile project. I've attended a couple of the meetings of the Solar Society in town, and they have some very good evidence that this is a worthwhile project, and so I'm happy to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon.
I too support this. Been wanting to see something like this happen for quite a long time, so it's great to see it at the table, and I support it.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak to it? Okay, I'd just like to thank Councillor Lavery, because Councillor Lavery has really provided the leadership on this item. I don't think it would be before us without you there, so appreciate that. All those in favor of the motion? Passes unanimously. Thank you. I think we have time for 17.3, Trans-Canada Highway Corridor Safety Improvement Implementation. If we could have the proposed motion on the screen, I will ask for a mover and a seconder to open discussion. Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. Seconder to the motion. Councillor Eliason, thank you. Would the Chief Administrative Officer read the motion aloud, please?
Yes, Your Worship, the motion is that Council approve Phase 1 and 2 of the Trans-Canada Corridor Safety Improvements as recommended in the 2013 study as prepared by ISL Engineering Limited, and that the city enter into letters of agreement with both the Ministry of Transportation and ICBC for the cost sharing of said improvements, and that the Ministry of Transportation provide a written agreement that gateway signage and speed reader signs be permitted to be installed to the east and west of the downtown core as a condition of proceeding with the project, and that the city and the ministry review the installation of a red light camera at the intersection of Alexander Street Northeast and the Trans-Canada Highway 1 year after Phase 1 and Phase 2 improvements have been completed.
Great, thank you. I'd ask the Director of Engineering and Public Works to review the plan with us, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this was discussed extensively at the last Development Planning Services Committee meeting. At that point, I presented a bit of a history and timeline of the events, which go back to well before 2008. So we've been dealing with this issue for a number of years, more intensely during the period when the report was prepared in 2013. We have met with the ministry based on the last council resolution, which was to form an agreement with them, and we came to the conclusion that it would be better for the city to do the project in its entirety, which I spoke to last week. And then I provided some maps as well that showed the functionality of the change. And the biggest change is that with the relocation of the lights from Ross to 4th, the ministry has agreed to install advanced left turn signals at both the Shuswap and the new proposed 4th Street intersection. And from staff's opinion, that is improving the access egress to the downtown immensely. The biggest concern, if I can just put it in a nutshell, with the Trans-Canada Corridor currently is the spacing of the lights. Currently, the Ross Street and the Alexander Street are too close. The light, even though there is advanced signals, warning signals for when the lights go red, the lights are too close, and it causes an issue with visibility and also with stopping distances. So having the lights spread out increases the safety factor. Now, having said that, from the study, it indicated that there wasn't a lot of vehicles running red lights, because if there are running red lights, then you get T-bone accidents. So essentially, you'd get side impacts. And that wasn't shown in the collision impact information that we got from ICBC back in 2013. Since then, we have had one major accident at Shuswap Street where a semi-driver went through a red light and smashed into one of the BC Transit buses, and that caused injury. And then in I think it was December 2016, we had another accident which was a rear ender, and that was at Ross Street and TCH, and that was eastbound traffic, and a car stopped for the light, and unfortunately there was a small car in between, and a large semi rear-ended the car, and there was that was the one where the mother had lost her child during that accident. So there is a need to improve safety along this corridor, and there has been. And I think that the biggest concern that we have from staff's perspective, we would like to see the entire project go through, because then it's less impact on everybody at once. It doesn't phase it out. And also, we will be able to deal with other issues as far as access egress into the downtown. So nothing will change at Alexander. We will get advanced lefts at Shuswap and full advanced lefts at 4th if this is approved. The only costing that the ministry has asked, or that we proposed to the ministry, was, of course, this is going to create another 230 or 220,000 approximately in cost for the second phase. And the ministry has asked us to cost share on the controller box at Shuswap Street, which is roughly $30,000. So in its entirety, to do the whole project, it's going to cost the city $30,000 more. And then this still is subject to ICBC partnering or cost sharing, which we haven't, sorry, I'll just rephrase that. So phase 1 was approved by the ICBC to cost share, but phase 2 hasn't been brought forward to them yet. But the ministry had indicated to me that that they felt confident the ICBC would step up for a cost share on that part of the project as well. So, sorry for the long-winded response. I know we talked about it lots last week, but this is very important to staff. And if there's any questions, please feel free. And I do have the maps available as well.
Great, thank you very much. And the $30,000 is in the budget.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'll turn it over to councilors. Councilor Lyson.
Thanks. The map, I know we don't have it here, but I'll point. This intersection here, will that
We
turn
have the map, I think. Yep.
Well, you can all look at me. The intersection right here, is that going to turn into a four-way stop?
Okay, oh, I see, you're talking about Second, and you'll pass it over to staff.
Put it on mine.
It doesn't show on the map.
So, Your Worship, Councillor Eliason is referring to the 2nd and 6th intersection, I believe. So right here.
Councilor Lyson, that's when you're talking about, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, that will be turned into a four-way stop as an interim measure. As the traffic flows increase, the flow, we anticipate that this will have to be a thoroughfare and that the stop signs will only be on the adjoining streets on Second.
So the exact opposite of where it is right now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. I just have comments.
Okay, do you want to hold your comments for now? Okay. We'll come back to you, Councillor Lyson. Thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Actually, no questions, just comments, because I asked all the questions last week.
Okay. Councillor Wallace Richmond, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Your Worship. I do have a question, and we may not know the answer at this moment, but I think it would be important to have an appropriate plan to advise the merchants and the residents on nearby of the change once it's approved, so that they can prepare accordingly.
Okay, so your question is, do we have that in place, or do we have plans to put that in place?
Do we anticipate that we'll build that into the process?
Thank you. Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Your Worship, I would see us building it into the process. There will obviously be activities on the highway. We can put it out on our website, but I would like to consult with the ministry because it would be their project.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate that. I think communication is really key to projects such as this. Councillor Lindgren.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying that I support all these changes for all the reasons staff has brought forward and the ministry has brought forward. I think that it's important that we remember that in 2017, I believe it was, I participated actually in a series of rallies at the highway to bring attention to this after the accident where the mom lost her baby. And Global TV was there, and both they and us witnessed many, many, many semi-trucks running that red light. Some of them were broadcast on the news that evening, and so I think that we've been lucky that there haven't been more T-bone accidents there. I think Mrs. Bremnes was actually killed in a T-bone accident at that very intersection at Alexander. So I'm still skeptical that this will solve that part of the problem, but I think it will help to solve a lot of the other problems. And so because of that, I'm definitely in support of this. I did have one question, though, about the advanced green. I understand that there will be an advanced green if you're turning off the highway onto the side streets, but I forget if we were planning for an advanced green from the side streets onto the highway.
Thank you. Director of Public Works.
So, Your Worship, the advanced lefts will be, if I'm answering your question correctly, so if we look at the map here, I'll just zoom in and give you more of a visual. So if I'm hearing your question correctly, you're looking to see if the advanced left will come off the side street, and that is correct.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and it's the same way off of, so Tim Hortons is here. If you're waiting in line, you'll get an advanced left to go onto the highway, and vice versa from 6th. You'll get an advanced left to go and turn west onto the highway.
That's great. I think that will mitigate a lot of the problem I'm talking about. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open it up to comments. Councillor Eliason, thank you for waiting.
Yeah, thanks. I I won't be voting in support of this. I think that we could do a better job of negotiating with the wonderful folks at the ministry. That's just my opinion. And I've been here for a long time, and so I know what it's like. I'm always hesitant to give up when we're not receiving a perceived get. So the access to our downtown core is essential. And if you talk to the kind folks from Chase about ministry decisions and their access to and from the highway into their downtown core, you're going to find out that they're not happy about it. I know we're not losing a bunch, and we're still going to maintain this and that, but the Ross Street access and the weird little perceived access by Jade Buffet are important ones. Yeah, no, you're looking at it exactly. You figured it out. They seem like they're not important, but the left and right accesses to those certain times are very, very useful for people. And I won't support this because I don't agree in everything we're giving up for the perceived get. And I think that the Ross Street access and the other access are too important to give up at this time. So I won't support it, although it's a value decision of the safety, which I think is important, which I think can be done by adding one light, which is what they're proposing here on 4th, without sacrificing the other light and the other accesses, which is an economic one, which is how do you access your downtown to ensure the viability of business and the viability of our services downtown. So I don't want to limit the access to our downtown, so I won't support this. And I understand that if I lose 6-1 on this one.
Thanks, Councillor Flynn, or Councillor Lyson. I'm not sure you maybe understand this. I had to ask the question at planning that on Ross and on McLeod, there are write-ins and write-outs, even though there's that little.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I do understand that there are write-ins and write-outs. If you look at Ross and McLeod, currently there are left-ins.
Yes, you're correct.
If you're going right, if you're going east, there's a left into McLeod, and there's a left into Ross, and there's a straight through off Ross, and then there's a really sketchy straight through from McLeod. And I don't know if that's maybe the safest one, but a lot of people who can't get across use McLeod as the bleeder valve for Shuswap, right? Because it's a quicker turnaround out to Okanagan. Having quite familiar with the downtown after having lived in the Lower Hood for 11 years, I know the intersections pretty well. So I just hate to give up those accesses when I think we could have got everything that we wanted, considering we're still paying for it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship. And I just was going to ask one more question, but I just want confirmation. We highlighted what's going to happen at the new light. I just want to make sure I'm clear to understand that also at Shuswap, getting in and out of town and getting into town, there's going to be advance left both ways on the Trans-Canada, and also getting out of town to get onto the Trans-Canada, there's going to be an advance left as well, correct?
Director of Engineering Public Works.
Your Worship, you're referring to Shuswap Street?
Yes. No, it's not
Or
Shuswap.
sorry, Shuswap Street,
Shuswap,
yes.
yeah.
Shuswap Street has advance, right? So back in 2010, we lobbied the ministry to get an advance left into the downtown.
Yeah.
And they reluctantly agreed because the backup was going past the queuing line.
Yeah.
So we were successful in getting that from them back in 2010. This would allow both advance lefts in and out of the downtown, so.
Okay, thank you. I will vote in support. We spent a lot of time talking about this. This has been on the agenda for a long time, and I'm not sure. I remember for an additional 220,000, us only ever having to pay something like 30,000. So I think financially, we are getting a lot. Secondly, nobody can argue that it is safe to go across the Trans-Canada Highway at an uncontrolled intersection at any time And those two accesses that crossing the Trans-Canada are being closed, in my opinion, are more than being made up for with a brand new left turn in and out, another left turn in at Shuswap, and left turns to get out of the downtown. So I'm not going to question that there's change here, and people might struggle with the change, but I think it could be argued the opposite of what Councillor Eliason is saying, is that we're getting more, better, and safer access to our downtown. Yes, people will be unhappy they can't take their lives in their hands and cross at the intersection by the arts on whatever that street is called. And also people, if the light is gone at the current light by the Ross Street, by the fire hall, nobody would want to try to cross that in any way, shape, or form when we've got 3 perfectly good signalized advanced turn intersections. So we will never engineer perfect safety, and making these changes is not going to ensure there won't be future accidents. But in my opinion, having sat here and been through this a lot, I think this is a significant improvement. The traffic engineers think it's a significant improvement. Our staff thinks it's a significant improvement. And I am not a traffic engineer, but I believe personally, as somebody who crosses this highway 5 to 6 to 8 times a day, I think these are significant improvements at the most important intersections. So I will vote in support.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Mayor Harrison. My thinking is very similar to Councillor Flynn's on this, and without replicating the discussion from last Monday, we've got 2 separate road systems with mutually exclusive needs, and there's not room for the right improvements on either of the systems. So I do want to thank staff. I mean, it's their job to bring this back to us, this conundrum. You've been doing it. I do think the primary default here right now is safety. I think the offer that we have is a significant step ahead of even what we had the last time that we looked at it, especially with the, and it makes imminent sense to me to do this in one, well, it used to, it was going to be phase 1 and then phase 2. We've got 2 separate phases and to go for it. So I accept the recommendations of the experts. I recognize their implications. I think that the what's been put in front of us minimizes access to downtown, and it's a big step for safety, so I will support.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Councillor Eliason, this is your last opportunity.
Yep. I'm just, and I'm not trying to not make things safer, and I don't want my message to come across that way. When we built the underpass at 20th and 21st, one of our big sticking point was how do we maintain all of the same on and off accesses that we can? And so you might notice the off-ramp by Askew's, the weird on-ramp by Copper View, the on-ramp by Hilltop, and the only natural kind of one, which is still kind of weird, is the bowling center exit lane. So one of the main concerns was how do we get all the same accesses that we currently enjoy, but make this safer? We did that. I'm just saying that I would like to have seen more accesses kept to access our downtown for the viability of businesses downtown than just agreeing with everything the ministry said. And I know staff did a good job, but we're here to advocate. This is what we do. We're not getting, and I'll count them with you, Councillor Flynn, we're not getting the same number of accesses to and from our downtown core with this plan. It's simple, it's a fact. I would like to see more, and maybe when we go back to the ministry and beg and plead, we'll get some of those back, but it's really hard to get them back once they're gone. So I will vote against it just because of the access points.
Thank you, Councillor Eliason. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. It's true we have considered this over the last term and now this term considerably. 2 conversations, access and safety. You can't mitigate one for the other, as I have said previous. The accesses are changing. I don't know that, I can't say I fully agree that they're being lost. We're moving a light. We're changing the opportunity to cross the highway to turn left. And I think that on balance, with the light at 4th, has sort of the visual effect of pushing the downtown out a tiny bit. I think there are hidden benefits to visually stretching out the town by putting the light on this far end as opposed to where it is now. So I'm happy to support it, and I look forward to seeing the project get underway.
Thank you. So I'll add my comments. Just start talking a little bit about the history of the situation here. And I think one of the things we've heard from staff is that the majority of the local people live up in the Hillcrest area. And actually, you can go back to the other map, that's okay, I think. But this is a good point. That certainly shows that. If we could just, if we can just take that thing down where the blue arrow is in the center of the, see? Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, so 5th Avenue, as you can see, 5th Avenue originally was designed to go straight through and connect there. Now, due to the wiseness of the council of the day, of which I was a part, and I would not change my decision even with this map, is the council of the day chose to think about things other than cars. And they said, no, we're not going to put that road through the park. Traffic engineers did not like that decision. But I think families with kids liked it. And I think we would not change that today when you look out the windows here. And we have a beautiful playground in our downtown that's well used. So that really is at the core of this change, because now when you come down, as the arrow shows, now you can turn right and go across the light. This is a big advantage, because if that light's not there, we'll go back here, keep going. Yeah, people might go that way, or they might go that way right through the park to go across at Alexander. We do not want that. So as far as local traffic flow goes, this decision to move the light is positive if you think about where the people live and where they're trying to go to the downtown. Because that little awkward left to get onto Ross or right to get onto Ross is not good for pedestrians. So we have to think about that. The other advantages, I think, that have already been pointed out are the right and left advance signals on Shuswap and on 4th. And if we can just go over to Shuswap first of all with that little hand, we've all parked there trying to go left, and the traffic stacks way back up, and the right-hand lane as you come out is right and straight. And so if you want to go straight and you're behind someone who wants to go right, you can't go. So the traffic continues to back up. The second problem is when you try to go left there, when the light changes, if you can go left, the pedestrians are trying to go across the street because that's their only chance, and they have about 15 seconds to get across.
11, I timed it.
There we go. I was over by 4. This is dangerous, and there's going to be a pedestrian vehicle accident there. The right delayed light there is going to solve that problem, and it's also going to solve it down at 4th. So these are definite advantages to this plan. I like the 2 amendments to the motion. The speed reader boards are important in my view at both the west and east sides of town, but they're not as important as the gateway signage. And the gateway signage to me is one of the keys behind this whole safety. Like, I want some type of creative overhead, unique downtown signage over top of the highway on the west and the east side, because that is going to slow traffic down. That's the best traffic calming we can get, and it's also the best way to get people to know our downtown's there and they can turn onto it. And so that's part of this amendment that the MOTI representatives that were here on last Monday agreed that we would receive that in writing. And I will work with staff to find to look for reserve funds so that we can include that in this project, because I want it to happen at the same time. Now, I'm not making that as a promise, because I don't know if I can get the money at the same time, but I'm gonna try, because I think it's crucial to the project. And we heard, of course, from residents about the speed reader board signs coming down, especially coming down Tank Hill. So all those things will slow traffic down. I did not win on the red light camera, although we did get a delayed motion from Councillor Flynn, thank you. And I think one of the problems is Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure does not control red light cameras. The Attorney General controls red light cameras. So I propose that we meet with the Attorney General at DBCM in September, and I'm going to make our pitch, with your help, I'm sure, or you will make the pitch with my help, for a red light camera at one of our intersections. Maybe it's Alexander, maybe not, because I believe that slows traffic as well. So after our long discussions at planning and giving the pros and cons and the amendments to the motion, I will support the motion as amended and presented here. Councillor Flynn.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. I just wanted to reiterate that absolutely no intersections are being closed. There is restrictions in crossing the Trans-Canada, which there should be, at non-controlled intersections. We've got better accesses, and I still have to reiterate what Councillor Wallace-Richmond said. This is about safety and about access to the downtown, and in my opinion, safety should not be compromised for access to the downtown. And I would suggest with the improvements at 6th, there are significantly more safe ways to get across the highway and into the downtown. So there's still right in, right out on the two intersections that are being somewhat restricted on crossing the Trans-Canada, but I think the enhancements make up for that, and I will vote in support.
Okay, I will call the question. I think everybody's have lots of opportunity to speak to it. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Councillor Eliason is opposed. Motion passes. Thank you. Welcome, Tracy. Thank you for being here, and thank you for waiting just a little bit for us to get through that item. We appreciate you being here. Come forward, please. So, Council, this is item 13.1.
Thank you very much for allowing me, as the representative of the Arts Council, to come and give you an annual report on our 2018 year.
Good. Just before you start, Tracy, just so you know, we've got 15 minutes allowed for you, which I'm sure is ample time. Usually we go with about 10 minutes presentation, about 5 minutes questions. Will that work for you?
I timed myself. I'm 8.5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So, first I'm going to quickly spin through. Where do I point my thingy, though? That's the only thing. To there? I'm sorry. I'm going to quickly go through our 2018 exhibition program. We started the year with the 18 by 18 show, in which we got 234 works from 100 different members of the community. One of those wonderful inclusive exhibitions that showed all different kinds of media that people are working in, lots of different ideas, and it was a fabulous show. We then went to our Thompson Rivers University BFA show. This is a biennale of sorts, where we co-curate the show with students of the curatorial program at TRU. It's a great opportunity for young people in this community to learn what kind of BFA programs there are in the region. We then had an Amy Modal solo exhibition. Amy is a professor at Okanagan College in linguistics, and so her exhibition was about language, about the language of mathematics and the language of gesture, and it was fabulous. We had a exceptionally wonderful time learning about language. And then speaking of that, we launched into Slahaya, which was a 2-year project in partnership with Louis Thomas about sharing Secwépemc stories with all the children of the community. So this exhibition was mostly audio. We had artworks that were very small so that they could fit into the Slahaya box. And that is the phase 2 of the project, which I will go into in just a few minutes. We were also given the opportunity to have multiple events during the Slahaya exhibition. For instance, Dolores Purdyby is seen here giving us a basket demo and talk. Dolores was the winner of the BC Achievement Awards for BC Aboriginal Achievement Awards in 2017 for her work in basket making. There's the Slahaya box being shown by Astrid Varnes, who is our program manager at a high school tour. We had lots of wonderful tours that show. In August, we had Harold Nix, who's not only an exceptional landscape painter, but also a musician and songwriter. So we had a wonderful concert during the Supercrawl week featuring him, and we had Pizza on the Plaza. So we had a wonderful use of our outdoor space for that event too. We launched into peak year, which is the third time I've done this exhibition. It's about the salmon run, except this time we used climate change as our main focus and used the salmon runs as our lens by which to examine the effects of climate change on our region. It was a pretty fantastic exhibition too. Lots of installation work. And finally, we have Dark Nights. This was our opportunity to challenge local artists to integrate new technology into their artworks. We had lots of lit up works and dark spaces. It was pretty wonderful. So like I mentioned, we have, I turned my staff over by half. There's 3 of us, so it's not easy to keep this long-term consistency in a small staff, but I am very honored to have been joined by Astrid Varnes on the bottom left and Kate Fagervik on the top left, and they are doing an exceptional job already. When Astrid started, we launched right into WOW, got our first rain out of the season, and it was PJ Fest, the final concert for Brian Pratt Johnson after 25 years, and we had to relocate to the gym, so we weren't able to manage to fit 250 people or so into that gym. Not quite the 500 we were expecting at the wharf, but that was okay. It was pretty wonderful. We had a pretty good season. We did have lots of issues. We had technical difficulties in the first couple of concerts, but overall it's such an expected event that if we didn't do it, I don't know what would happen. We'd see probably riots. But for our 25th anniversary, we did this hashtag WOW25 picnic contest where Askew's partnered with us and gave away gift cards to the winners every week for people who hashtagged that and posted an interesting photo of WOW. So we had lots of really beautiful photos being posted about the concert series. We did have 3 rainouts, and this was something that you know a lot about, because of course getting gutters on the gazebo was a big push. And I'm really pleased to see that last weekend I drove by and there's gutters on the gazebo. Pretty exciting. So this was our team at the end of the year after the Devon Coyote cancellation, and we all came back soaking wet and had to drink lemonade in our kitchen instead of have our pizza party out at the park. But other than that, I wanted to point out how incredible my little team was. Lots of youth involved with the program, a few volunteers mixed in there with my wonderful professional staff. So of course, with 3 rainouts, we did see a reduced attendance and donation collection. The last time we had 3 rainouts in 1 year was in 2011, so you can see the impact it has on the program. So another reason why I'm super happy to have gutters. On to educational programming, there's the Slahaya box in its natural environment. It was built by Hop U. Haskett and has already been making the rounds at different schools, and the kids are able to touch and see the artwork as well as listen to the stories from the local Secwepemc people, the Chiptakwala and the Slahaya, and the teachers so far are just giving us a huge, wonderful, positive feedback. Our educational tours have become more interactive and less product-based. We have a 3-year focus on climate change, so we're trying not to produce as much stuff. So one of the wonderful things about hiring Astrid Varnes, who has her master's in applied theater, and Kate Fagervik, who has a BFA plus a couple years of education, Bachelor of Education degree, is that we have these really wonderful, thoughtful, theatrical, interactive events for school tours. And that is going to continue to grow. We've had an incredible increase of tours just in these last few months. So even though in our statistics it looks like it's leveled off, we did have 750 kids just come to the peak year exhibition. So our 18-19 stats will be reflecting that. Our Family Saturdays has leveled off though. That's not a huge problem. We find ourselves sometimes at or beyond capacity on Saturdays, and so being at around 1,000 kids a year is actually pretty comfortable. Our exhibition attendance is also a little bit lower, but you have to keep in mind, I think I pointed this out last year, that in 2015 we had the Cardiff Miller Show. In 2016 we had Trail Mix, and so our 2015-16 year had both of those shows in it, and so now we look like we're slumping, but really those were exceptional summers. And so this is about 8,000 to 9,000 is actually kind of a normal year for us. Next year, we look forward to this wonderful slate of exhibitions. In Dialogue with the Collection is on right now. 13 works from our permanent collection are being responded to by contemporary artists. It's actually pretty great. And one of the funnest things about this show is listening to other people look at the show, because almost everybody has stories about some of the people who are in the show. Some of the works that were from the collection are from people who have not been on the planet, but for only about 10 years. So we also have memories and stories to share. So people are in dialogue with each other as well as with the artwork. Kids These Days is our open youth exhibition on next. Flight is all about the declining songbird population, and we're focusing on the fact that we have seen 50% decline in songbirds in the last 40 years in North America. And because Canada is the nursery of songbirds, it's a really important issue for us locally. And, oops, I probably should finish that. A Seat at the Table is also a very long-term project that I'm doing with Louis Thomas and Libby Chisholm on food sustainability, security, and sovereignty. And so it's a mixed Indigenous and settler exhibition, but it's really exploring our food security as we go into the future. Devenir is a touring exhibition of paintings and mobiles, very colorful and wonderful. The Little Lake is this huge community, also 2.5-year project, of a felted sculpture honoring Maguire Lake. So that'll be super fun. New projects this year, of course, we look forward to working on the roof over the top of the mosaic. We've been doing workshop after workshop on the Little Lake. We've been doing improvements to the Art Center. As you see down the bottom left, Eric is putting a tile backsplash into the lower level kitchen that the Pottery Club produced for Canada 150. That was their project. And then we're also trying to ensure that people can thoughtfully rehome artworks by providing the Art in the Attic online auction every year. It's now our fundraiser that you can donate works that you love and just don't show anymore, and we will happily find a new home for them, but we keep the money. And finally, our big project is the front steps. I took a photo of the steps on Friday, and I was going to add it to my presentation, and I forgot that I had already sent it along, but I'm happy to text it to you. If you haven't noticed that our steps are crumbling and ready to just about come off the building, just so excited to see this particular project come to fruition, because we already have quite a number of uses for our front plaza, and lots of people do use it for seating and hanging out and photos and all kinds of things. So it'll be a much grander entrance for us, even though it doesn't change the look of the building very much. And just to add on to that, I have Ian McDermott's quote with me, which I've been waiting for quite a long time. So I'll hand it to somebody as soon as I'm done. There, how was that?
Cool. Tracy, we really appreciate you putting so much information into less than 10 minutes. Thank you so much. I'll open it up to questions or comments from council.
Oops.
Councillor Lindgren?
No questions, just only to say thank you for all that you guys do. I had no idea that there was this much going on. So it's good to be made aware. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. I too just want to thank all of your entire team, your dedicated volunteers, and your staff. Nice to see new faces with great experience and training coming to help with us with our community arts. The other thing I also want to point out is we owe you a thank you for the work that you do in terms of helping the city, advising us on pieces like this adjunct gallery that we may do upstairs, or anything related to the arts, and your work on the cultural master plan. So it's really great to be able to have a fee for service with the District Arts Council, and it would be a good day to say thank you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Cannon.
Thank you, Tracy. Good presentation. I was just curious with the Wednesday on the Wharf, putting the gutters on the gazebo, I guess. Will the concert still then have the ability to go on when there's a rainstorm, and then will you promote like umbrellas in the rain concert, or like, have you given that some thought?
That's a good question, but no, we won't be able to conduct the concerts in the rain. The biggest challenge has been when it rains before we set up, or if it rains shortly before the concert starts. happens a lot here. And then water has poured onto the stage. And once you have pooling of water on the stage, then it's not safe for any electrical equipment to be on there. So sometimes we've been in a situation where we've had everything set up and a little 10-minute squall runs through and everything gets soaking wet and nobody can do anything for risk of electrocution.
Okay.
So that would be what we would aim for, is not having concerts in the rain, but being safe from the puddles that have gathered on the stage when there's been rain earlier in the day.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Tracy, when is the first WOW? What is the date of it, do you know?
June 12th, I
Okay,
believe.
June 12th, so we have to write that down. And we'll have to pass the word around. Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Thanks. Just a final thought. Through your worship to the corporate officer, are we not, through our sort of new communication plan, also promoting the work of the groups that we support? I believe I did see a mention of the District Arts Council on the city's website or on the city's social media feed.
Through your worship, yes. Through our social media strategy, we have been promoting activities that have been occurring at the Arts Center.
Yeah. So.
Okay, great, thank
Really
you.
appreciate.
Any other questions for Tracy? Thank you so much. Thanks for coming
Thank
and
you.
speaking to us. Really appreciate it.
Good job.
Okay, we are down to other business, 18.1, Shuswap Watershed Council alternate appointment. Council, yes, you may.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Flynn. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Lassen? No. Okay. I'm happy to be the alternate. I know Councillor Lavery is the appointee, and they're quarterly meetings, are they not? So Councillor Lavery is confident he'd be able to make all of them. If he can't for some reason, I would be happy to fill in. All those in favor of that motion? Okay, thank you. We are down to question and answer period. Is there anyone in the gallery that has a question that they would like to ask us? Now would be your opportunity. Come on down to the mic. Warren, nice to see you at council.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was trying to get Chad's attention because the underpass, where would that be? At Second or Fourth?
It's at Ross.
It's at Ross. Oh, so you're, when you turn off, so you're moving the stoplight from there. You're eliminating that stoplight, but that's the road that's going to go straight through the underpass to the waterfront.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm sure you thought this all through, but for me, downtown is an integral part, so is the waterfront, which it gives you access to the lake, which to me is another very highly desirable place to go. So now you've got to make you go straight down, dead end, turn right, turn left.
That's right, and we
Okay,
do.
so that's all been
we
looked into
recognize that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all. I was just looking at the map, and I didn't see where that underpass was gonna cross on the map. It just excluded that area. Okay, so I was kind of siding with Chad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you, members of the gallery who were here this afternoon. We'll take a recess until 7 o'clock. Okay, where are we eating?
I think they decided on